heavyweight division is the crown jewel of combat sports, and once upon a time, this was where the baddest men on the planet lived. Now it's a ghost town full of part-timers, guys that are middle-aged, and dudes who gas out after a round and a half. Somewhere between Cain Velasquez and Tom Aspinall, something broke, and today, the UFC heavyweight division just kinda sucks. Let's start with the elephant in the room, Jon Jones. At light heavyweight, he was an animal.
How much you weigh right now, fat?
But in the heavyweight division, he was less of a champion and more of a roadblock. He moved up in 2023, didn't fight for nearly 2 years, then came back late 2024 to fight a retired Stipe Miocic who hadn't won a fight since 2020. He then sat on the belt until July of 2025, and finally he retired.
Jon Jones called us last night and retired. Jon Jones is officially retired. Tom Aspinall is the heavyweight champion of the UFC.
Jones beat Cyril Gane in 2 minutes, which was impressive, sure, but then everything just stopped. He refused to fight Tom Aspinall, who had already become interim champ. He didn't fight Pavlovich, he didn't fight Almeida, he just sat on the belt while the rest of the division collected dust. Jones's reasoning was that he wanted a legacy fight, which means an easier payday against a 42-year-old firefighter instead of a 30-year-old killer from England. Meanwhile, the UFC just let it happen. They're freezing an entire division just to sell nostalgia. So while Jon Jones is at home tweeting Bible quotes, Tom Aspinall was defending a belt that wasn't even real. If Jon Jones holding up the division wasn't bad enough, the UFC is cutting heavyweights faster than they can sign them. Do you guys remember Jairzinho Rozenstruik? He was ranked number 9, he's a knockout artist and still dangerous, and then the UFC cut him right after he lost to Sergey Pavlovich, a title challenger and top 3 monster. That's not a bad loss, that's literally what's supposed to happen in the rankings. But nope, see you later. And then there's Hamdi Abdelwahab, the Egyptian Olympic wrestler who beat Chris Barnett at UFC 321. They cut him too, coming off of a win. Meanwhile, we've got plenty of lightweights on losing streaks collecting checks on every fight night card. Tony Ferguson was allowed to lose 8 fights in a row before they finally cut him. So the message is clear. If you're a heavyweight and you're not already a star, then the UFC doesn't care. And the result is obvious. The roster is thinner. You can't build a division when every loss is a firing offense. Heavyweights develop slower and they peak later, but the UFC doesn't want to invest long term. They just want instant fireworks. So instead of letting prospects grow, they cut them after one stumble. As of right now, the UFC heavyweight division only has 41 fighters. That's it. For comparison, there are 105 lightweights, 92 featherweights, and 91 welterweights. The division that's supposed to represent the baddest men alive has the same amount of employees as a fast food restaurant. The heavyweight division is small, and it's stagnant. When a fighter pulls out, half the division collapses. When a contender gets injured, matchmaking becomes a puzzle with missing pieces. There's so many no-names in heavyweight because no one else is available.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Even the ranked fighters look like a recycling bin. Stipe Miocic was ranked number 8 when he fought Jon Jones despite not having fought in years. Tom Aspinall's already beat half the division. Blades and Pavlovich keep killing off potential challengers before they can build their names. Unlike MMA, boxing actually builds heavyweights like stars. They get slow burn promotion, small fights, steady pay increases, and then title shots. In the UFC, you get thrown to a ranked opponent by fight 2, and if you lose, you're cut. Francis Ngannou proved it perfectly. He was the most exciting heavyweight champion since Prime Stipe, and the UFC let him walk because he wanted fair pay and boxing freedom. Now he's making millions fighting Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, more than his entire UFC career combined. The UFC lost their Mike Tyson because they refused to pay for it.
Francis isn't a good guy. Plays the good guy. I don't understand the language, and so he seems like he's a nice guy. He's not, and he's just not a guy that I wanted to be in business with.
Even mid-tier heavyweights are probably looking at that and think, why should I get punched in the head by Sergey Pavlovich for $80,000 when I can box influencers and make $500,000? I can't blame them. The UFC's business model only works when you've got desperate fighters, and most heavyweights have better options. And boxing isn't the only sport stealing talent. Literally every major sport is. If you're a huge athletic guy in the US, you don't grow up dreaming of the UFC. You play football, you play basketball. MMA is what you turn to after you fail at everything else. And that's not an insult, but it's just reality. A 6'5", 250-pound kid with real speed and coordination can make millions in the NFL. Even bench warmers in the NFL make more than UFC champions. Meanwhile, in MMA, you're fighting for $12,000 to show and $12,000 to win, plus a bonus that you'll never get because Dana didn't like your performance. So yeah, the athletes are going somewhere else. In countries like Australia or the UK, big guys play rugby. Almost no one grows up saying, I want to be a UFC heavyweight. And that's what we have now, a division full of talented but incomplete fighters. So what do we have left? There's Tom Aspinall. the one bright spot. Fast, technical, and humble, the modern heavyweight prototype. Jon Jones wasted a lot of his prime by holding up the division, and his fight against Ciryl Gane went to shit because of an eye poke. Sergey Pavlovich has great power, Jailton Almeida has great jiu-jitsu, but he doesn't know how to punch on the ground. Alexander Volkov got robbed by Ciryl Gane, and Ciryl Gane has an infinite title shot glitch. It seems like we keep repeating the same fights and there's no new names coming up in the hat. Below the top guys are a bunch of names that come and go before you learn how to pronounce them. The UFC heavyweight division is like a buffet where half the trays are empty. A few good options are great, but there's not enough to fill a plate. Here's another thing nobody really talks about. It's just rare to be that big. The average UFC heavyweight is around 6'3" and 240 pounds. That's not just big, that's statistical freak territory. Globally, the average man is about 5'7". That means the average UFC heavyweight is half a foot taller and outweighs the vast majority of the planet. They're genetic outliers before they even throw a punch. And that's why the lighter weight classes are so deep. There are just way more men who fit into those frames. A guy who's 5'9" and 160 pounds can realistically become a lightweight or a featherweight with an athletic build. But to fight at heavyweight, you don't just have to be tall, you have to be huge and athletic. It's like finding a unicorn that can sprint, wrestle, and throw a high kick. So when people complain about the shallow talent pool, remember, there just aren't that many 6'3" genetic monsters walking around ready to cut a check for $12,000 and a chance at CTE. So even when you do find someone that size, they usually get snatched by another sport. Football takes them, rugby takes them, boxing takes them. And the few who stay have to build that muscle all naturally, because in today's stricter testing era, the Wild West steroid physiques of the early 2000s are mostly gone. Well, mostly. So between the scarcity of giants, the money vacuum of other sports, and fewer performance enhancers floating around, you're left with a handful of men physically capable and willing to do this job, and that handful is getting smaller every year. So let's recap. Jon Jones held up the division, the UFC cuts prospects before they develop, the roster is too small to sustain momentum, boxing steals the biggest athletes, football steals the rest, and the fighters who stay, they're fighting uphill against the system. Fixing it isn't rocket science. Sign more heavyweights from wrestling, kickboxing, powerlifting, anywhere. Stop cutting ranked guys after one loss. Raise pace so real athletes see MMA as a career, not a last resort. And for the love of the sport, stop letting 40-year-olds headline title fights. The UFC heavyweight division doesn't just suck because the fighters are bad, it sucks because the system doesn't reward them. Afterthought. Heavyweight MMA used to be great, but now it's fallen off a cliff. The talent exists and the hunger exists, but until the UFC starts treating heavyweights like assets instead of expendable fireworks, the division will keep being what it is now. Big punches, big hype, and big disappointment. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment for the sake of the algorithm. I'll see you guys next time.